Election 2013 from Market Square Shopping Centre. This is Geelong's 93.9 Bay FM.
And welcome to Bay FM's 2013 Federal Election Forum from Market Square Shopping Centre. Today we're putting the seat of Corio under the spotlight. Tomorrow at midday it will be the seat of Corangamite. On the panel with me today is Bay FM News Director Rob McLennan, and from the Geelong Weekly Review, Elizabeth O'Neill. My name is Mark Hyland. For the next hour, it will be the 2013 Federal Election Forum from Market Square Shopping Centre. So if you're in the vicinity and you can come down in your lunch hour, that'd be fantastic. We'd love to see you. We welcome the Federal Member for Corio and Minister for Trade, Richard Marles, MP, with us today. Also, the other candidates with us today are Tony Harrington from the Palmer United Party, Peter Reid from the Liberal Party, Independent Stephanie Asher, Patrick Atherton from the Australian Christians, Greg Lacey from the Greens, and Justine Martin from the Sex Party. Apologies today from Sue Bull from the Socialist Alliance, Brendan Fenn from Family First, and Yanni Legrand from Rise Up Australia. Now, the Bay FM Forum will run for approximately 1 hour. We'll be finished at 1 o'clock. Each candidate will have an introductory 60 seconds to make us familiar with their concerns and policies. We'll then cover off some other topics in more detail over the course of the forum. Bay FM senior journalist Victoria Webb-Taylor will be circulating through the crowd here as well at Market Square, taking a few questions, and if we have the opportunity to put those to our candidates, we certainly will. You'll find that 1 hour will go very quickly, so we'll respectfully ask the candidates to keep their responses fairly brief and to the point. If you're looking for any information too about the election in any way, shape or form, whether it's how to vote, where to vote, polling booth opening and closing times, anything like that, voting early, you can go to the Australian Electoral Commission website, which is aec.gov.au. And Bay FM's election coverage, as I said, will continue tomorrow at midday for the Corangamite Forum, and also 6 p.m. on election night we'll be bringing you all the action, the blow-by-blow, every update every 15 minutes or so with our News Director Rob McLennan.
And Mark, it's funny that we here lined up the way we are today. We've got this panel of 7 candidates here in front of us, and us 3 sitting on another table. It looks very footy.
It does a bit, doesn't it? But I can assure you it's not.
Well, it's finals week, so it's finals week in more way than one for you lot.
Let's get things underway. We'll get the Bay FM 2013 Federal Election Forum underway with the opening statements. Now, to all our candidates, you'll hear a bell at around the 45-second mark, which will give you 15 seconds to wrap things up. So we might start with the Federal Member for Corio and Minister for Trade, Richard Marles. Just an opening statement from you, Richard.
Well, thank you, Mark. Can I acknowledge the Wathaurong, my fellow candidates? Ladies and gentlemen, this election will be about the future of Geelong. It's about jobs. It's about a government that during the height of the global economic crisis provided stimulus which supported thousands of jobs across Geelong, which provided $40 million to Point Henry in its darkest hour so that 1,000 jobs could be saved at Alcoa. Whereas the Liberals are going to cut $1 billion from the car industry, and in the process they'll kill it. And you kill the car industry and manufacturing's down for the count. Almost half our regional output is still based on manufacturing. The Liberals have come to Corio with nothing other than cuts. This is about a government which has increased the pension by more than any government before it, or the Liberals who are going to cut the low-income supplement. Between Labor, who's introduced a paid parental leave scheme where every baby's valued the same, or the Liberals who have introduced an unfair scheme where the richer you are, the more you'll get paid, the more your baby's considered to be worth. Labor stands for jobs, particularly during the tough times. Labor stands for not leaving anyone behind. Labor stands for Geelong.
Thank you, Richard Marles, Federal Member for Corio. We'll move on to Tony Harrington from the Palmer United Party. Tony, over to you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Listen, Palmer United Party, we're about getting the country moving. We need to get the economy going. We need to get money moving through the economy. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is we're going to give every working Australian a 15% reduction on your current rate of tax. That'll put about $2,500 into the pockets of every Australian worker. The second thing we're going to do, one of our main policies, is that people now are struggling to pay mortgages. People are worried about their jobs. People are worried about job insecurity. We're going to say the first $10,000 of your mortgage will now become tax deductible, so we free up a little bit more money for you to spend as a family so you can afford to live. The third thing we're looking at doing, old age pensioners. We see that pensioners and war veterans in this country have been left behind. Their wages have never been kept up to speed with inflation, so we're going to be putting a $150 pay rise to all pensioners across Australia. And one of the other things we're doing, we get rid of the carbon tax. We'll let companies pay their tax on an annual basis instead of paying it quarterly, because cash flow is the biggest hindrance to business for employing people. And what we'll do there is we'll generate $70 billion into the Australian economy and get this country moving.
Thank you, Tony Harrington from the Palmer United Party. You're listening to Bay FM's 2013 Federal Election Forum from Market Square Shopping Centre. Our next introduction is from Peter Reid from the Liberal Party. Peter.
Thank you very much. I also acknowledge the Wathaurong and my fellow colleagues on the panel. The Coalition is going to build a stronger economy from which we all can benefit, because it all starts with building a stronger economy. Richard is right to one point in that we are going to cut. We are going to cut the carbon tax, which we were promised would never occur, but was delivered in this election. We have plebiscite on the carbon tax. We're also going to cut the waste in poor policy implemented and the waste in which our taxpayer funds have been mismanaged. We're also going to be building the infrastructure that we need for the 21st century, the roads and the ability to be able to have our country return back to prosperity. We know that the Coalition has done this in the past, and we will be able to do this again in the future. And finally, we'll deal with contentious issues. We'll stop the people smugglers, stop them bringing people here and allowing them to die on rickety boats, and we will return our country to where it was previously.
Thank you, Peter. Peter Reid, the Liberal Party candidate for Corio. To the Independent, Stephanie Asher.
Thank you, Mark. Welcome, everybody. The question I get asked most often, other than are you going to run for mayor again, is why are you standing in this election? And the answer is simply because I didn't have anyone to vote for. I wasn't happy with the choices and I didn't feel properly represented. And rather than whine about it, I want to do something to change it. I'm confident I can make a difference. It won't necessarily be the traditional way, but I think we're all seeing that the way we've always done things isn't working for any of us. Well, actually, it's working incredibly well for a few people. And people are frustrated by the lack of action, the constant swirl of waffle and the big promises. We're all amazed that no one's being held to account. And as an independent, I won't be making unaccountable promises of millions of dollars, but I will stand up for decency and respect, and I will make the effort to connect the policy with what happens for all of us on the ground. As a true independent, I'm not stuck to a party line, so I'll say what I think, I'll listen to what you think, and I'll act on what we need. It won't always be pretty, but it will be honest, and it could even be a lot of fun.
Stephanie Asher, the Independent for the seat of Corio. It's Bay FM's 2013 Federal Election Forum. From the Australian Christians, our next introduction from Patrick Atherton.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and hello to all the listeners too on a lovely day in Geelong, and greetings to all my colleagues here at the panel. Australian Christians believes that a moral foundation to society creates the best knock-on effect in terms of social welfare, in terms of the economy as well. We believe that, certainly in Corio, cost of living is clearly a major concern. That's polled pretty highly in terms of this particular electorate. So we believe that moral foundation gives rise to, whilst we wish to have a good balance between free market principles and a good compassionate approach to things like those less fortunate, the unemployed, the disabled, and also a pragmatic approach to asylum seekers as well. We've got some policies there which we hope combine the free market principles that give us the freedoms we have to enjoy living in a democracy like this, and will protect those less fortunate and be compassionate.
From the Australian Christians, Patrick Atherton, here at the Bay FM 2013 Federal Election Forum, Market Square. Still a couple to go from the Greens. Greg Lacey, to you.
Hi there, my name's Greg Lacey. I'm the Greens candidate for Corio. I'm running for the Greens because I care about the long-term future of Australia, and I feel that the Greens have the policies to see for Australia to prosper in the long term. I grew up in the Dandenong Ranges and moved to Geelong about 9 years ago when I met my now wife, and just recently had a beautiful baby daughter. And I was thinking to myself, she could well be alive in the year 2100, and I thought, what kind of a future do I want to leave for her? And if she decides to have children, her children and the children further beyond there, if it's good for them, it's good for everybody else, a nice, clean, healthy environment. And for me, the Greens stand up for caring about the environment. We need a clean energy future and to rid ourselves of the dirty carbon-based energy production of the past, and move ourselves onto clean renewable energy. the Greens also stand up for decent healthcare for everybody. It's no one's fault when they get sick, and we believe in a world-class health system for everybody. We also care in a world-class education system for everybody, as every child has the right to a awesome education, and so they can prosper in life.
Thank you. From the Greens, Greg Lacey, candidate for Corio. And finally, with our introductions from the Sex Party, Justine Martin.
Hi everyone, I'm Justine Martin from the Australian Sex Party. I believe in a fairer society for everyone, regardless of race, creed or sexual orientation. We're touching on the policies that the other major parties are too scared to touch. So that's legalising gay marriage, legalising euthanasia, regulating and taxing the supply of marijuana, and keeping religion out of politics, so taxing the church, not the charitable side, but the business side. So with the taxing of marijuana and taxing of the churches, that would generate $20 billion a year back into society. Personally, I'm standing for the election because I believe that Australia is a country of fair-minded people and that we should all strive to build a society that embraces everyone. I want to know that I've done my bit towards achieving this goal. I also ask you to vote for the Australian Sex Party, not only here in Corio, but also in the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Justine. Justine Martin from the Sex Party. You're listening to Bay FM's 2013 Federal Election Forum. This is the first of two forums. Today is the seat of Corio, tomorrow is the seat of Corangamite. 16 past 12, and if you normally listen to the 80s lunch at this time of day, apologies. But this is, we consider, reasonably important. So we're voting on Saturday. We need to know exactly what's going on in our two major seats in this region. Joining me on the panel is our News Director, Bay FM News Director Rob McLennan, and from the Geelong Weekly Review, we have Elizabeth O'Neill with us. Rob, might throw to you first.
Yeah, I think we might start. I'd like to start with Richard. You mentioned during your introduction there that the election is about the future of Geelong and jobs, and that's the line that Kevin Rudd's been giving us for the past few days. Clearly the government's pushing that very hard in the last days of the campaign. Geelong hasn't done too well in jobs in the last couple of years, have they? Have we?
Well, I think what that highlights is that we face challenges in the city. Obviously, the decision that was made by Ford not to make cars in Geelong from 2016 is a big challenge for Geelong. It's why I was really proud that on the very day that Ford made that decision, we put forward the bulk of the money towards a $24 million fund, which is there to support future manufacturing opportunities here in Geelong. Okay. On that very same day, Tony Abbott was out there saying that Geelong wouldn't be a manufacturing city in the future. So there's a real difference between Labor and Liberal going forward in terms of whether or not you're going to get a government which will stand by you in terms of jobs.
Okay, can I toss that to Peter Reid from the Liberal Party? Peter, your party plans to cut funding to the car industry. How does that equate with generating more jobs?
You know, this is really part of a pattern of behaviour by the Labor Party. All they have really at this stage are mistruths and smears. They don't have a positive message. They don't have a positive history. Whereas the Liberal Party does have a positive plan for the future. And our plan is firstly to get the economy back on track. Jobs come from building the economy. There's a very simple equation. Every business in this mall knows profitability equals revenue minus expenses. When you load up expenses, then your profitability goes down. So we'll get rid of the carbon tax, we'll get rid of all the extra regulatory costs that they are bearing with, we'll help them be in a position where they can thrive and prosper, where they can help employ more people. Until you help businesses to grow, you're not creating an environment which jobs can flourish. So we will be looking after the conditions in which jobs can grow and flourish.
Now, Tony Harrington from the Party United Party would like to respond, I think.
Yeah, look, one of our national policies is that we believe that all the minerals that are being mined in in Queensland and Western Australia, instead of exporting our minerals out of our Australian earth over to places like Japan for say $20 a tonne, what we're saying is that our policy is that we set up manufacturing bases in Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia, and we then manufacture the products that Japan are now producing, and we send them out for $40,000 a tonne as opposed to $20 a tonne. We generate jobs in the area, we generate growth in the area, we generate revenue for the country, and part of what we're also saying is that any revenue that's raised in a particular area, so for instance if Geelong was an area that we set up a big manufacturing base, then we would generate 25% of that wealth goes back into the community, so you're continually creating jobs over here.
Now, Patrick from the Australian Christians, did you want to say something there? Were you
No.
No, okay, sorry.
Okay, Greg Lacey from the Greens. What do you think about that? We're talking about mining.
Well, first of all, I think we need to put an adequate price on any mining iron ore or any other minerals dug out of the ground. We can only dig them out of the ground once, and once they've been dug out, they're gone forever. So we need to make sure that the Australian people get an adequate return for their minerals. Secondly, I do agree with Tony in terms of putting more investment in Australia for manufacturing, using those raw materials to manufacture. However, we need to use clean energy to do so. We can't rely on dirty old forms of energy, and there are tons of jobs in manufacturing new, say, wind turbines, and also the ongoing maintenance of such facilities to have ongoing energy security for such manufacturing in the future.
But wouldn't you say that the Greens are largely based on their environmental policy, and that's what they base a lot of their policies on?
Yep.
Wouldn't you say that kind of goes against the manufacturing industry, and that will cut a lot of jobs from the industry because of what you want to bring in?
Totally not, no. Obviously, we need manufactured goods to have our standard of living that we have now. I'm just saying doing it in a responsible way, and doing it with clean energy is a far more responsible way than relying on dirty forms of energy of the past.
You're listening to Geelong's 93.9 Bay FM. It's the 2013 Federal Election Forum. We're putting the seat of Corio under the spotlight today. On the panel is the Geelong Weekly Review's Elizabeth O'Neill and Bay FM News Director Rob McLennan.
Okay, I'd like to go to Patrick from the Australian Christians. Patrick, you said in your introduction that you are interested in a compassionate approach to government, and yet your party is opposed to gay marriage. How is that compassionate?
Well, put it this way, we have a major industrial project going on in the backyard. We have environmental impact statements done, and rightly so. This is a proposal for a major societal change to a major societal construct that we believe has been very, very demonstrably beneficial to society and to the general welfare of society over the years. And yet there has not only not been a proper, broad social impact study done, it's been largely discouraged. This is a heavily politicised issue. We don't believe the debate has even begun.
Justine, you were shaking your head at that. Would you like to comment?
Why do we need a study on it? Why do we need to spend more money on it? It's a given. It's a given. Are we going to be the last country to come around to gay marriage?
Well, I should
Aren't
say,
we supposed to be a forwarding country? Aren't we supposed to be in front of people in the civilised world? We're not.
Patrick?
Well, again, this is about a societal benefit, a general benefit to the general welfare. The rights of children, for example, it's one of the gay ministers in France, a homosexual man, actually said in opposition to same-sex marriage that the rights of children are more important than the rights to children. And this is an ultimate consequence of same-sex marriage that we want to have looked at. It needs to be discussed, and it hasn't even been discussed. It's demonised, it's marginalised, but it's not being discussed.
Patrick, whether you like it or not, this is a hot issue. And I'm sure you would have seen Kevin Rudd's comments on Q&A earlier in the week. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's been reported enough in the media now in the last 2 days. 2 days is a long time. Look, we are kind of used to grotesque stereotypes and caricatures made of our faith and made of our beliefs. Yes, it is a bit disappointing that it comes from our Prime Minister, but enough's been said about that, I think.
Peter Reid, your party, your leader, Tony Abbott, is almost putting one foot in the hot water and one in the cold and calling it warm. He says he has no problem with it personally, that he's opposed to it, but he's not arguing the fact. At the end of the day, what's wrong with giving members like yourself, party members, a conscience vote?
Look, the Liberal Party policy on this subject is that marriage is between a man and a woman. There was a parliamentary vote on this last year. It was resoundingly defeated. If the issue is revisited after the election, then I will consult widely with the committee and make sure that any input I have in a parliamentary room reflects the views. But I will say, despite your views there, Elizabeth, this is not the most important issue that is facing postcodes 3214, 3215 and 3219. They're worried about the economy. They're worried about jobs. They're worried about cost of living. This might appeal to the inner city elite who often vote left-wing for popular left-wing causes, but this is not the main issue that the City of Geelong is facing.
Richard Marles?
Well, like I'd agree that I think there are other very important issues which face Geelong, but I think to describe this as a left-wing issue is quite missing the point. This is an issue which is a difficult one, but people would be aware that I have supported same-sex marriage in the Parliament. I do think that same-sex couples ought to have the right to express their relationship by having the state acknowledge it. I think it's also important that freedom of religion is also able to be preserved so that churches aren't forced to marry people in circumstances where they don't want to. But I hear questions about children. I think actually there are already lots and lots of children to same-sex couples in Australia. They have a right to have parents who are married. But to describe this as a left-wing issue and to not offer a conscience vote when the great Liberal Party describes itself as being a party of conscience which doesn't bind people is a big, big shame. If we're really going to move forward on this, there does need to be a conscience vote across the entire Parliament.
One more question before we go to an ad break. Peter, I wanted to bring it back to you. What's the point of you going out and consulting widely amongst your constituency if you were to win the seat of Corio, if you take it into the Parliament and your leader says, it doesn't matter, this is policy, you're not going to get a conscience vote no matter what your constituents think?
Well, look, the Liberal Party has a very broad church. Unlike other parties which allow for a very narrow viewpoint in their party rooms, the Liberal Party allows for a broad range of views to be heard.
Well, why can't we hear them in the Parliament then?
You have in the past. There have been many cases where people have crossed the floor in the Liberal Party without consequence. If you do the same thing in the Labor Party, you're expelled.
Well, then why not allow a conscience vote? What's the problem with that? If the people are going to cross the floor anyway, let's allow a conscience vote.
Well, as I said, this is an issue that is a fixation of people living in the inner city suburbs. It's not the main focus of the people who are struggling to survive and struggling with their cost of living and struggling to find a job.
You're listening.
Can I just say, I think one of the issues is you can't ignore the issues that come before you in the Parliament. So you mightn't like them, it might not be the issues that you want to deal with, but if, as an MP, you've got to vote on everything and you've got to have a view. And the fact of the matter is, Malcolm Turnbull wants to support this. The Liberal Party won't let him.
We're going
the Liberal
to have
Party is
to
meant to be the party of conscience. It's not on this.
Leave that subject there. Thank you. And I'm sure people will make up their own mind listening to this. It's Bay FM's 2013 Federal Election Forum from Market Square. More in a moment. It's the seat of Corio here at Bay FM.